7 days of siege, the sound of trumpets, and in an instant, impenetrable walls crumble. A divine miracle, a seismic event, or an ingenious strategy. The fall of the walls of Jericho defies logic and sparks curiosity. Did faith, sound, and engineering unite to rewrite history? Jericho wasn't just an ancient city. It was a legendary bastion in the heart of the Levant, a strategic and military jewel of inestimable value. Its privileged location in the Jordan Valley gave it control over vital trade routes and crucial military paths, making it a coveted prize for any rising empire. Jericho's reputation for invincibility wasn't just a legend passed down through generations, but a concrete testament to its highly advanced defensive engineering. Extensive archaeological excavations at the Tel Ez Sultan site, where ancient Jericho stood, have revealed a truly impressive fortification system. Multiple layers of massive walls, constructed with high-quality mud bricks and meticulously reinforced with solid stone foundations. This structure represented the pinnacle of defensive technology of its time, precisely designed to withstand prolonged sieges, endure continuous battering ram attacks, and repel any conventional military assault. The base of these walls functioned not only as an impenetrable physical barrier, it also stood as a powerful symbol of Jericho's security, prosperity, and undeniable power. The very existence of the city, with its seemingly impregnable defenses, unequivocally established the colossal magnitude of the challenge that the Israelites, newly freed from slavery in Egypt and journeying towards the Promised Land, would face. Jericho, therefore, represented the first and most formidable obstacle in their path. The detailed biblical account in the book of Joshua describes the divine instruction to march repeatedly around the city, an unusual tactic that, at first glance, seemed completely devoid of conventional military logic. This foundation of Jericho, as an intrinsically impenetrable fortress, is absolutely crucial for understanding the depth and overwhelming impact of the event that would unfold. The fall of its walls, therefore, transcended a simple act of war. It manifested as a phenomenon that defies purely human comprehension, rooted as much in the resilience and sophisticated engineering of antiquity as in the expectation of an extraordinary intervention that would overflow the limits of human and military capability. The imposition of such a robust first barrier dramatically served to elevate the significance and intensity of its subsequent and inexplicable fall, making it both a historical and spiritual landmark. The narrative of the Siege of Jericho, meticulously detailed in the book of Joshua, is remarkably distinct from any conventional military strategy employed in antiquity. There was no laborious construction of colossal battering rams, no elaborate scaling ladders to assault the heights of the walls, nor dangerous and painstaking attempts to undermine the fortress's foundations from below. Instead, the Israelites received an instruction that bordered on the enigmatic and the paradoxical: to perform a ritual seemingly devoid of any practical military logic. For 6 consecutive days, they were to march around the city just once a day. On the 7th and decisive day, the ritual would intensify dramatically, with 7 complete circuits around the walls, culminating with the prolonged and penetrating blast of trumpets and a powerful, unified shout from all the people. This method, at first glance lacking any practical combat rationale, serves as a primary manifestation of the unwavering faith and unrestricted obedience of the Israelites. The silent, persistently repeated march around Jericho's walls was much more than mere physical movement. It was an act of profound patience, discipline, and, crucially, a potent and sophisticated form of psychological warfare. With each circuit, the constant, methodical, and unyielding presence of the Israelites must have progressively eroded the morale and confidence of Jericho's defenders, planting deep seeds of doubt, anxiety, and a growing fear of the unknown. The almost absolute silence, broken only by the rhythmic footsteps of the priestly procession and the sporadic, mysterious blast of the trumpets functioned as an unsettling and menacing premonition of something grand, inevitable, and possibly catastrophic. At the climax of the seventh day, the collective shout of the people, accompanied by the prolonged, resonant, and deafening sound of the trumpets, reached a dramatic and cataclysmic crescendo. It is at this culminating moment that sound emerges not merely as a signal or a command, but as an active protagonist and perhaps even a physical agent with the capacity for impact. Although the Bible does not explicitly state that the sound of the trumpets alone brought down the walls, it associates it directly and inseparably with the exact and subsequent moment of collapse. This scene is a vivid illustration of the confluence of multiple factors: unconditional obedience and faith acting as primary catalysts, and sound not merely as a warning or a war cry, but perhaps as an element with potential physical or metaphysical structural impact. This is the starting point for all subsequent and in-depth inquiries into the influence of sound vibration and its potential and intriguing interaction with the city's massive structures, opening the door to the exploration of complex scientific phenomena like resonance. The enigmatic and sudden collapse of Jericho's walls, triggered by the sound of trumpets and the unified shout of the people, has sparked centuries of intense debate and profound speculation, particularly within the fields of physics and acoustic engineering. The central idea permeating this discussion is the phenomenon of resonance. Resonance occurs when an object begins to vibrate with a significantly greater amplitude than normal, because the frequency of the external forces applied to it precisely matches its own natural frequency of vibration. To illustrate this fundamental principle, one only needs to consider common and well-known examples. An opera singer with a powerful voice who can shatter a crystal glass by tuning their voice to the glass as resonant frequency, or a bridge that oscillates dangerously under the rhythmic and continuous force of the wind, like the famous Tacoma Narrows Bridge in 1940. These are classic and well-documented cases of resonance in action, dramatically demonstrating the power of vibrations when in perfect synchronicity. Jericho's walls, despite their massive, robust, and seemingly impregnable construction, would, like any physical structure, possess an inherent natural frequency of vibration. Given their grandeur and solidity, this frequency would intrinsically be low, requiring considerable force to induce significant vibration. The proposed theory, which fascinates engineers and acousticians, is that the intense sounds produced by the trumpets and the potent, collective shout of all the Israelite people could have generated sound waves with specific frequencies. If, by a remarkable coincidence, or, more intriguingly, by intentional design, these acoustic frequencies aligned with the natural frequency of Jericho's walls, or critical portions of their structure, this could have induced the structures to vibrate with increasing intensity. As these induced vibrations progressively increased in amplitude, the internal structure of the walls would be subjected to unprecedented internal stresses. The mud bricks, even the most robust and meticulously laid, possess inherent limits of strength and elasticity. Continuous, intensified, and prolonged vibrations could have caused a phenomenon known as structural fatigue, resulting in the emergence and rapid expansion of microscopic fissures that, once initiated, would quickly propagate throughout the entire structure, compromising its integrity. Furthermore, the presence of an earthquake or even secondary, smaller tremors would act as a devastating catalyst, providing the final push to an already weakened structure vibrating intensely at its resonance point. The complexity of this engineering of the unexpected lies in the demand for remarkable precision in the sound's frequency. The combined sound intensity and the potential synergy with other environmental factors, such as seismic activity, transforming an act of profound faith into a fascinating and complex case study for the intricate intersection between the divine, acoustics, and the undeniable laws of nature. Jericho's geographical location is undoubtedly an element of vital importance and a critical factor in analyzing the fall of its walls, as the city is situated in an extremely geoseismically active region, the Jordan Valley. This area lies directly on the Dead Sea Transform Fault, one of the most significant and active tectonic plate boundaries in the entire Middle East. This fault is notoriously known for its ability to generate frequent and, at times, large magnitude earthquakes, which configures it as a zone of high and constant seismic instability. Thus, the occurrence of an earthquake precisely at the moment the Israelites concluded their siege is not merely a remote possibility or speculation, but rather a geologically plausible and highly relevant consideration based on geophysical evidence from the region. An earthquake, even if of moderate intensity, would have the potential to cause devastating effects on Jericho's robust walls. This would be particularly true if the structures had already been weakened by centuries of existence, natural wear and tear over time, or if the fortress's original engineering had not been designed with modern understanding and the necessary reinforcements to withstand seismic forces. Although ancient constructions were often impressively robust in their conception and execution, they did not always incorporate advanced anti-seismic design principles, which would intrinsically make them more vulnerable to ground movements. Ground vibrations generated by an earthquake create shear and compression waves. These waves, as they propagate through the Earth's crust and impact the foundations and the walls themselves, can induce differential movements and intense internal stresses, leading to structural failures, wide fissures, and, in extreme cases, catastrophic collapse. The most intriguing aspect, and one that fuels much of the speculation, lies in the possible synergy between the seismic factor and the acoustic strategy employed by the Israelites. If the trumpets and the people's shout had, in some way, induced initial vibrations in the wall structures, a subsequent earthquake, even if it was unturned, of epic proportions, could have acted as a final catalyst and an amplifier of the already existing stresses. A gigantic earthquake would not have been necessary to bring down the entire city. A well-localized tremor with a nearby epicenter and at the right moment, combined with a possible acoustic resonance that was already stressing the structures, could have been more than sufficient to cause the collapse of the wall's most vulnerable portions. This detailed analysis of the seismic factor adds a layer of realism and complexity to the interpretation of the Jericho event. It does not rule out the possibility of a larger or miraculous intervention, but explores the natural mechanisms that, whether orchestrated or coincidental, could have been an intrinsic part of the scenario that led to one of the most impressive and debated historical and biblical events of antiquity. The fall of the walls of Jericho cannot be analyzed simplistically, either through a purely scientific lens that seeks only mechanical explanations or an exclusively theological one that focuses solely on miracles. The event, in its magnitude and uniqueness, reveals itself as a fascinating and complex intersection of unwavering faith, ingenious tactics, and an extraordinary window of opportunity. The faith of the Israelite people in their God was undoubtedly the primary driving force behind their actions. They engaged in a siege ritual that, to any military observer of the time, openly defied logic and strategic reason. However, they did so with blind obedience and a deep, unquestioning trust in a divine promise. This total adherence to a higher will, in itself, is a powerful component that transcends the purely rational and had an immense psychological impact on both the besiegers and the besieged. From a tactical standpoint, the 7-day siege, with its daily march and culminating ritual, can be interpreted as a highly effective and astute form of psychological warfare. The constant, methodical, and unwavering presence of the Israelites around the walls, the unsettling silence that preceded the great final shout, and the suspense and uncertainty created by such an unusual and unpredictable siege ritual would have progressively eroded the morale resistance, and sanity of Jericho's defenders. The mounting and unbearable tension within the city, coupled with a possible scarcity of supplies due to the prolonged siege, would create an environment of extreme psychological and physical vulnerability, weakening internal resistance even before any direct attack or confrontation. This tactic, in itself, is a case study on the power of mind over matter. The opportunity arises in the surprising and precise confluence of events. If an earthquake indeed occurred at the exact moment of the final shout and trumpet blast, this would not be a mere fortuitous coincidence, but a perfect synchronization of forces, both natural and divine. The structural vulnerability of the walls, whether due to inherent flaws in ancient construction, accumulated material fatigue over centuries, or inherent susceptibility to vibrations at their natural frequency, combined with the intense sound waves from the trumpets and the amplified collective shout, and, crucially, magnified by a seismic event, would create the ideal and almost inevitable scenario for a mass collapse. The beauty of this interpretation lies in the fact that belief in divine providence does not need to negate the existence of natural factors. On the contrary, it suggests that the laws of nature can be subtly orchestrated with millimeter precision to fulfill a greater predetermined purpose. Jericho, in this sense, transforms into an exemplary case of how faith and obedience can mobilize actions that, when aligned and catalyzed by precise natural phenomena and astute strategies, result in events of historical magnitude and lasting legacy. The contemporary lesson we can draw is that understanding complex phenomena often cannot be achieved by a single isolated discipline, but rather by the intricate, mysterious, and surprising interaction of diverse forces and perspectives. Despite all significant advancements in studies of acoustics, structural engineering, geology, and modern archaeology, the fall of the walls of Jericho continues to be shrouded in a veil of profound mystery and awe. Continuous and dedicated efforts to fully unravel the event, whether through rigorous scientific analyses based on empirical data or profound theological interpretations seeking spiritual meaning, invariably encounter the intrinsic limits of human comprehension. We can speculate based on plausible theories about sound resonance, the propagation of structural vibrations, the existence of pre-existing construction flaws in the walls, or the decisive intervention of a powerful earthquake. It is even possible to build computational models and conduct complex simulations that demonstrate the plausibility of each of these scenarios in isolation, testing their conditions and outcomes. However, what continues to defy mere randomness and pure coincidence is the almost orchestrated temporal precision and remarkable simultaneity of the described events. The exact end of the seventh day of siege, the final and unified blast of the trumpets, the massive and synchronized shout of all the people, and the sudden, complete, and widespread collapse of the walls. It is the perfect synchronicity, and the convergence of so many seemingly disconnected factors that takes us beyond what is purely explainable by random or isolated processes. The true depth and lasting significance of the Jericho event do not lie in finding a single satisfactory explanation that eliminates all doubts, but rather in recognizing the immense complexity, intricate interconnectedness, and almost magical harmony of forces that can operate in a single and decisive historical moment. What transcends our ability to fully understand and measure is the underlying orchestration. If the event was in fact a divine miracle, it did not necessarily have to violate the fundamental laws of physics. It may have operated precisely through them, in an arrangement so precise, harmonious, and impeccable that it seems impossible to attribute solely to chance without a superior intelligence orchestrating every detail. If, on the other hand, it was a combination of natural factors that fortuitously converged, the exact coincidence of all of them at the most opportune moment is, in itself, a phenomenon so extraordinary that it prompts deep reflection on the nature of chance, purpose, and destiny. The Jericho event, therefore, constantly invites us to ponder what lies beyond our reach of measurement and calculation, about the invisible that so powerfully influences the visible, and about the capacity of the unattainable and the transcendental to shape the very material reality we know. Thus, the mystery of Jericho remains an eternal invitation to admiration, curiosity, and the continuous pursuit of a deeper understanding of the universe and our fascinating, complex place within it. After all, what brought down the walls of Jericho? A miracle, science, or an orchestrated convergence of both? The story defies simple explanations, inviting us to reflect on faith, sound, engineering, and the invisible forces that shape destiny. The mystery of Jericho persists, piquing our curiosity about the limits of our knowledge,